When you watch my first ever video, you'll notice that I'm pretty much telling white girls, go get yourself a Chinese man. The reason for that is I foresee it becoming more and more dangerous to be a white man in Australia, and as time goes on, it is becoming more apparent that it is not a welcoming country to people like me. No matter, you're not judged on your competency, you're just told that you are privileged because of the colour of your skin. Doesn't matter how skillful you are, doesn't matter how intelligent you are, you can never win. And if you do win, they just pass it off as white privilege. So you can't win, and people are frustrated. I've had enough myself. Before we get started, make sure you click the subscribe button, click the bell icon so you don't miss out on anything. I've also got a Patreon if you want to support me. So I've clipped together some old footage of Australians talking about immigration, and then zoomed to today and what people are talking about in immigration today. So let's get into it.
On which I am now embarking is vital to the nation. I am going abroad to seek ships for immigrants. If we have no ships, we shall get no immigrants. And without immigration, the future of the Australia we know will be both uneasy and brief.
Dad's taking me to Australia. He says that's the best place for me to get on in life.
You too can go to Australia for £10. Inquire now at your local employment exchange or at Australia House, London.
It's going along well. You don't want Asians. Their ways and habits are so far different to ours. Once you open that little crack in the door and in they come, the minute you let them in, you're going to finish up. You'll get overrun with them. Next to no time you finish up, you'll have more Asians than you got anything else.
Think of the White Australia policy?
Well, I think it's a good, and they should really have it and keep out the coloured races.
White Australia policy? Well, I think you have to live in a country with coloureds before you can decide upon it. People here don't live with Aboriginals, do they? But in New York, they live side by side with coloureds. I come from New York, and I wouldn't care to have them living in the same house as me.
Well, do you think it should be discontinued at this stage, or...?
No, I don't. I think it should be continued.
Even more forcefully, perhaps?
Even more forcefully.
Why is that?
Oh, well, I believe in the way things are at present. When you take into consideration what's happening overseas, in South Africa and those places, we seem to be very well off here.
Do you think we can keep it this way for long, with the tides and forces running at the moment?
Yes, I don't think there's any reason why we can't. If everybody takes a proper attitude towards it, because I don't think we could have anything else but a White Australia policy.
Well, I'm in favour of it to a point.
Mm-hmm. What point would that be? Could you
I do think that we should keep our country, let's say, as white as possible, but we have our own natives that we should look after.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you say white in a purely coloured sense, or some economic necessity?
Well, no, I think that we should have migration is a very good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should stick more to British migrants.
White Australian policy? Well, I think it's all right as far as it goes, but I still think we should give our abos a good, fair go.
I don't altogether agree with it, but just the same, I wouldn't like to see the place overrun by all these other nations.
Well, the policy in itself is a crude attempt to limit the influx of foreign people into the country. That in itself is good. But on the other hand, it is an open manifestation of racial discrimination. And that in itself, of course, is inhuman.
Oh, well, no, I don't think it's fair. I think that when, you know, different countries that make good citizens,
yes,
that they should be admitted to the country. Don't you think so?
Now, why do you think it sprang up?
Oh, well, I don't know. I suppose to keep White Australia a white race, don't you think?
So do you think this is wise or politic at the moment?
No, in a way I don't think so, because there's plenty of deserving countries, you know, that should be admitted here.
What do you think the picture of Australia is in the Asian countries through this White Australia policy?
Oh, well, I think they'd resent it, don't you?
Do I think that the policy is wise? No, I don't.
You see no merit in the White Australia policy at all?
No, I do not. As a matter of fact, I think that all this is banking up against Australia, against the white race, and The result will probably be an explosion of some description, and I think that we could release the pressure, as it were, on this bomb by allowing a quarter, not necessarily stating that it is but a quarter, but perhaps making it necessary that certain tests would have to be undergone before any people of any race would be allowed into the country.
Well, I think it's rather hard on the Asians, but...
Will it become hard on the Australians through persevering with it?
It could. It could, because we haven't got their friendship any longer.
You'd like to see the floodgates open?
No, not the floodgates, but just gently to start with.
And do you think it could be dangerous?
It could be.
For Australia?
It could be, for the simple reason they're all looking towards Wyndham and those places, Port Edwin and around there. The other side of Marlborough Bar in Western Australia, and it could, I mean, say, we've got to turn around and look to something now, populate it, and if we don't put the population into it, well, therefore we're going to get those that's going to populate.
Where do you suggest we get the population from now, with common market troubles and things like that?
Well, I mean, say, you can still get it from Europe.
It's very difficult now, I understand.
Still get it from Pevon?
It's very difficult now with the common market attractions over there.
Oh, of course.
Do you think we should turn to the Asians?
No. No.
Not even through any process of selectivity?
Oh, could be, yes. Could, yes.
Nothing to do with the colour of their skins?
No, no.
What about the picture we must be forming in Asian countries? This picture of white Australia?
Forming? Well, we can't help that. We can't control other countries.
Do you believe that the so-called white Australia policy will always be a stumbling block?
I don't think it's such a stumbling block as people pretend. But that it's important for us, I haven't the slightest doubt.
That we should maintain it the way it is?
So long as we possibly can, we ought to aim at having a homogeneous population. I don't want to see reproduced in Australia the kind of problem they have in South Africa, or in America, or increasingly in Great Britain. I think it's been a very good policy, and it's been of great value to us. And most of the criticism of it that I've ever heard doesn't come from these Oriental countries. It comes from wandering Australians.
For these views, of course, in the past, Sir Robert, you have been described as a racist.
Have I?
I have read this, yes.
Well, if I were not described as a racist, I'd be the only public man who hasn't been. That's one of these jargons, isn't it? One of these mod words. You call a man a racist.
I think politicians and business leaders ought to be acknowledging that it has finally sunk in. I thought I was a lonely voice for a long time, but I think I would say in the last 12 months, the message has sunk in, and the key message is this: immigration is good. We are a migrant nation. Our character derives from the fact that so many of us were born overseas. But would it be such a tragedy if instead of adding 1 million to our population every 3.5 years, we took 6 years about it? Could we achieve the benefits of immigration with a more manageable annual intake?
So, Bob, just to interrupt for a moment, former political elite, that is former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, recently came out and asked for the migration intake to be cut in half. It sounds like you're on song with him. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, more or less, at a less dramatic pace. It is the highest in the world. It is the highest in the world. Do we really want to be adding 1 million to our population every 3.5 years? Would it be such a departure from God's eternal plan for this continent?
The truth is, Ben, it's a dreadful time in Australia right now to be growing up as a young white man, because you'll go to university and be told you're a sexual predator. You'll be excluded from safe spaces that are said to be needed in universities because of these dreadful young white men walking around the place. You'll go out into jobs where there'll be employment quotas that lock you out solely because of your gender and your skin colour. Now, this is not the Australian way. We should be treating every individual on their merits. And we should also acknowledge, unlike your previous guest, that the average Australian man is doing the right thing. He's working hard, he's putting food on the table, he's looking after his wife and kids. He's not a wife basher, he's not a sexual predator, he's a good citizen in a successful country that's the envy of many around the world. Now, I've had a gutful of this demonisation of men. How about we say the average Aussie bloke is doing the right thing?
It is a very sad day in Australian politics when members on the floor of Parliament cannot support a notice motion that I moved yesterday stating that it is okay to be white. That the Senate acknowledge the deplorable rise of anti-white racism and attacks on Western civilization, and also it is okay to be white. There is a rise of anti-white racism in this country. The most demonised person in this country is the white male. Dina Tully says the white privilege of this nation. This white privilege has given these people the opportunity to change their lives around and become Australians. That's what white privilege has done to them, so they said. And I'll also say the fact is the white privilege is the Australians that went and fought, and the majority of them were white, that fought for the freedom of this nation. And freedom doesn't come without losing those lives and sacrifices made. And is that supposed to be the white privilege? Is that the same white privilege Dina Tully's talking about?